to the Oklahoma Memo Podcast, the weekly edition. My name is Ryan Welton, the founder and curator of the Oklahoma Memo newsletter. It's a daily news recap that we do Monday through Friday. It hits your inbox at 7 a.m., and it covers the big news of the day from the major news outlets from across the state. The mission of Oklahoma Memo is to reignite a daily news habit and connect Oklahomans to vetted sources of journalism. So, what a week it was, and we've got some great guests this week. But before we get to those, let's just do a quick recap of where we've been this week. A lot has happened, and as I look throughout the Oklahoma newsletters this week, we see that Ryan Walters is no longer the state superintendent. A gentleman named Lyndall Fields is. We see that there is now an Attorney General requested investigation into the State Department of Education, looking at spending over the years during Ryan Walters' tenure as superintendent. And it's been a big week. It's been a big week. I posted a video just a few moments ago talking about the Oklahoman story about the Teacher Hall of Fame portraits being put back up on the walls at the Oklahoma State Department of Education. As soon as Walters left, that was done. Just goes to show you that anything that is undone during an administration of any sort can be redone as soon as there is a new boss in town. It's not new boss, same as the old boss, as The Who once sang. It's been a beautiful week in Oklahoma. It feels very summer-like. It hasn't been a typical September-October. Many of you might not realize that this is supposed to be a second severe weather season. Severe weather season traditionally runs from March 15th to June 15th in Oklahoma. That's the primary severe weather season. But a secondary severe weather season typically runs from September 15th to October 15th. Doesn't feel like that's going to happen, although I will tell you, having been in local TV news for 20 years, you can get tornadoes in November and December for sure. In fact, I remember being at News on 6 in Tulsa. It was several years ago. It was the night that George H.W. Bush, the former president, passed away, and state championship games were being held at Skelly Stadium, at R.A. Chapman Stadium. And there were tornadoes everywhere. Severe weather was interrupting every game in the area, and it was quite a mess. And tornadoes touched down, and I believe that was at the very 1st of December. So we may just be delaying the inevitable in terms of severe weather. Also delaying the inevitable was Ryan Walters, who didn't hand in his formal resignation until the very last second, which delayed the introduction of Lyndall Fields, which happened at Eisenhower Elementary, I believe it was, in Tulsa on Thursday. And I thought, I've commented on this on my TikToks. If you're not following Oklahoma Memo on TikTok, on Instagram, and on YouTube, I would invite you to do so. There is a Twitter channel, if you will, an X channel, but I think long-term it doesn't fit into my plan. So TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook also. If you have Instagram, you got Facebook. But I thought the governor's selection of Lyndall Fields was inspired. I thought it was fantastic. I try to be a pragmatist politically. It's not that I play both sides. It's that I want to give credit where credit is due. And I thought he hit a home run. And the governor also made the argument for the state superintendent position being appointed and not one that is elected. And I tend to agree with that, with the idea being that the superintendent must be able to align with the governor, and that really you, the voter, still have a choice in the matter. Pick a better governor. If you don't like, the idea that Ryan Walters isn't kind of the public's fault is, I mean, I think we just have to face facts here. He was elected by the people. There you have it. Anyway, we've got good conversations today. We start off with a conversation with a gentleman named John Kennedy. And he's talking about a new piece of public art in downtown Oklahoma City. And I worked in downtown Oklahoma City for a couple of years, and I love the area. And this is only going to make it nicer. And it is a life-size, not a hero size, as he explains in our conversation. It is a statue depicting the first ever sit-in in the United States. It happened at Katz's Drugstore in Oklahoma City some 67 years ago, 1958. Clara Luper, the Clara Luper National Sit-In Plaza. I talked to him about that. He was a co-chair on a committee that put this together. It was a wonderful idea, and it's there, and there's a big event happening. There is a dedication that will happen on November the 1st. It's a few weeks away, but we wanted to make you aware that this is there. You can go see it now, but hopefully you'll join us for that event on November the 1st. And then I've got my weekly conversations with Scott Mitchell, the political analyst with Griffin Media, News 9, News on 6. We talk about what's happening in Oklahoma. I'll ask him about reaction to Lyndall Fields, reaction to Ryan Walters formally resigning. And we'll talk a little bit about the governor's race and a new ad that came out this week. Did you see it? It was the ad where Charles McCall chops a banana. I actually thought it was a kind of a stroke of advertising genius, although I don't know that it's strategically the right move, but if you're going to become governor in the state of Oklahoma, you have to win the Republican primary. And while it looks like Chip Keating, a new candidate in the race for governor, is focused on public safety, it looks like Charles McCall is more fighting the culture war. And which tactic will win? I don't know. There was a new poll that came out this week that showed that McCall had really cut into whatever lead that Gettner Drummond had. So all sorts of news ramping up on the gubernatorial race front there. We talked to Scott Mitchell about that. And then I bring in Grant Herms, formerly of News 9. He's a national podcaster now, big deal. He's just live and worldwide, as ZZ Top once sang. It's called Make It Make Sense with Grant Herms. There are a lot of podcasts called Make It Make Sense. His is called Make It Make Sense with Grant Herms. And I talk to him each week about national politics and how it impacts Oklahomans. So we always try to bring it home to us. And then I finish off with the conversation with my buddy Jeremy. Jeremy and I, we have a podcast called Bedlam Buds. He's a Cowboy. I'm a Sooner. We talk sports of all sorts. And with the baseball playoffs moving into the division series, we wanted to just talk a little bit about the great game and talk about OSU, Arizona, OU, Kent State, and Tulsa, Memphis. So with no further ado, let's start off with John Kennedy, and then you got Scott Mitchell, Grant Herms, and then my buddy Jeremy Cook to finish us out, and then we'll wrap it up at the very end of that. Each one of these videos and audio will be available individually on the podcast and on YouTube and on various platforms, and I appreciate you stopping by. If you would, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and sign up for the Oklahoma Memo newsletter at oklahomamemo.com. All right, let's start off with John Kennedy and the Clara Luper National Sit-In Plaza. Well, I am privileged today to be joined by one of Oklahoma City's preeminent civic leaders, John Kennedy. Welcome.
Thank you, Ryan. I'm looking forward to talking with you. And also, I congratulate you for being a pioneer in this new news that we get to watch.
It's been a lot of fun, and to be able to educate and inform people on things that are going on in the community, I think is important, and it's a lot of learning for me. And what we're talking about today, I'm a big believer in the public good. I'm a big believer in public art. And this Clara Luper Sit-In Plaza really adds to the fabric of downtown Oklahoma City. And for those of you watching who might not know who Clara Luper was, and that's okay, Clara Luper was a pioneer in the civil rights movement. She orchestrated the very first sit-in of that entire era at a place called Katz's Drugstore at Robinson in Maine back in 1958. Now, if you look up via Wikipedia or your history or civics books, you might see that there was a sit-in in Greensboro, North Carolina. That happened a couple years after. Clara Luper was the pioneer in this movement. She went on to have an illustrious career in the civil rights movement. She ran for Senate in 1972, and she's being honored with this public tribute. And it's a plaza that's come together, and there's an event that's coming up. But John, I just wanted to start. You're the co-chair of the committee that put this plaza together. How did the idea for the plaza come about, and who are some of the folks who were involved in making this happen?
Came about in 2018 is when this idea started. And it started because 2018 was the 60th anniversary of the beginning of the national sit-in movement. Started right here. The sit-in movement started right here in Oklahoma City. And just to add to what you said about Greensboro, North Carolina, those were really good people. They did a great job. In 1960, we had a 30-minute national news cycle. In 1958, the news cycle was only 15 minutes, so you really couldn't tell stories. You couldn't tell a lot of stories back then. Now, of course, it's 24 hours and it's on demand also. But so people didn't know about Oklahoma City and know what happened here. But in 1958, when the movement started, in 1959, the sit-inners, they went to the NAACP National Convention and told their stories and were honored for it. And that's how the Greensboro people knew about it and were able to develop their own in 1960. But in Oklahoma City, we know 1958 came before 1960. And I've chaired the Oklahoma City National Memorial, and we tell that story well. And the whole community, there were 300 people that were involved in the creation of the Oklahoma City National Memorial. And we've told that story well. But what we don't always do in Oklahoma is tell our stories. And I think part of that's the humility of Oklahomans. And but this sit-in movement is a really important story, and it's a national story, and that's in the name, the Clara Luper National Sit-in Plaza. So in 2018, the 60th anniversary, somebody contacted me about raising money to have flyers to announce the 60th anniversary and a gathering where people could gather and talk about this, what happened 60 years earlier. And I helped raise the money for that. But what I really gathered from that was we have not told that story. And we even have trouble raising not that much money just to have a flyer made. So locally, we struggled just to have a flyer made to announce that it was our 60th anniversary. And I thought, we've got to do better. We've got to do better than that. And I visited with Steve Lackmeyer, who's a reporter for the Oklahoma, and he's a great historian. And we both thought, wouldn't it be nice? And wouldn't it be nice if we had a life-size plaza in the middle of downtown right next to Castro, because there's a little park there. Main Street was closed, and there's a little park there. And we thought, well, if there's any way we could do it in that little park right where it happened, right at Main Street and Robinson, that would be great. So Steve called and had lunch with David Holt and said, John would like to work on this. And David Holt came up with Reverend Lee Cooper from Prospect Church. And Reverend Cooper, he's been a city council person. He's been a planning commissioner. He's been on urban renewal. He's just a really great person that I had interacted with at the planning commission. And Mayor Holt called and said, would you like to co-chair this with Pastor Cooper? And I said, I would love to. And it was great. And so Pastor Cooper and I put together, and this was a pure coincidence, but we put together a group of 13 people. And by the way, there's 13 original sit-inners. That's the coincidence. We really didn't plan that. But three of the people that we put on the committee were Marilyn Luper Hildreth, Joyce Jackson, and Joyce Henderson. They were all sit-inners. And we also, David Rainbolt wanted to participate, and he ultimately raised all the money for the plaza privately. And Sam Presti wanted to participate, and he and I worked together at the Oklahoma City Memorial. And I love working with Sam, and Sam gets in there and really works hard. And Leonard Benton from the Urban League, of course, Steve Lackmeyer, John Michael Williams, who is a real estate use attorney that really has done a lot of work downtown. And we thought he could help with the site, and he's been a great addition. Misty Doney, who I've worked with for about 25 years, Um, she was charged with finding the sculptors.
Mm.
And I can tell you that story when you want, but that's a really good story how she found the sculptors. Misty's involved with Indian Health, and so it's really outside of her expertise or experience. But Misty did the most amazing job finding the sculptors, and it all started with an astronaut. She found somebody in. Is it okay to go ahead and tell this
Yeah,
story?
no. So you're touching on the collaboration. Everything great requires collaboration. Nothing is done unilaterally. And when I was actually doing some research on this sit-in plaza, this piece of public art, I quickly realized that the artists who contributed to this aren't novices. They have impact everywhere. So yes, please tell us about this.
They do. And here's how that started. Misty used a little database and started inputting about finding a sculptor, because it's 15 figures are in this plaza, so it's a big piece of art. And the plaza is kind of the intersection of history and art and respect. And so Misty found a gentleman in Denver, Colorado named Ed Dwight. And Ed is one of the preeminent African-American sculptors in this country. He's remarkable. He's done so much public art, and it's just beautiful. Ed was 85 at the time. So Misty called him up and said, "Hey, I've read all about you, and I would really like to visit with you about being the artist for this plaza." So he came to Oklahoma City. He met with our committee. He met with the mayor. And he is exactly half as tall as the mayor of Oklahoma City. He is an astronaut. So that was a big requirement in those early missions, your size. So we've got a great photograph. I wish I could show you here of Ed Dwight and David Holt standing next to each other. But Ed Dwight, he's a two-time national treasure, which is hard to be. But he was chosen to be the first person on the moon by President Kennedy. It's a remarkable story. In 2019, on the 50th anniversary of the moon landing, there's a huge feature story about Ed Dwight in the New York Times. And so we started reading about him and researching him, and we're like, this is one of the most amazing people in this country that had this career. He obviously didn't end up getting to go to the moon, but he was the first person selected. And he had a great career and retired from that, and then became a sculptor. So we got to know Ed, and we're just like, you're just an amazing person. And it was great. And he loves the story of Clara Luper, and he was familiar with it. But he said, look, I'm 85. It takes a lot of time to do this. I can't do 15 sculptures, but I know who can. And he introduced us to Studio EIS up in Brooklyn, New York. He'd worked with them many times, and it's a family business. It's two brothers and a sister. They've been in business 50 years. But you researched it, so you know that they did Constitution Hall. They did all of the signers of the Constitution. They're amazing. They just got through doing all the sculptures for $1 billion project that the state of Texas is doing, redoing the Alamo. They were chosen to do all of those. They did the JFK statue outside the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. They did that right before our project. And they're really amazing. We met them, and Ed Dwight kind of helped us through how you work with them, and we really love them. They were here placing the lunch counter a week ago, and they said in 50 years this is one of their absolute favorite projects, and we all feel like we're family, and they love Maryland. I'll tell you who the real consultant was. Misty found Ed Dwight and found Studio EIS, but Marilyn Luper Hildreth Clara Luper's daughter, collaborated on every sculpture for authenticity. And up until 3 weeks ago, 11 out of the 13 original sit-inners depicted in the plaza were still alive. We lost one 3 weeks ago, but I just can't wait till the people that are depicted in that plaza get to see the final product.
You you nailed it when you said the intersection of art, history, and respect. I had a little chill on my arm when you said that. This is
I said that because I'm self-conscious. I feel like I'm talking in run-on sentences here. So
well, but so true. And as we see the growth of both Tulsa and Oklahoma City, and what public art adds to the area, what do you envision that the Clara Luper National Sit-in Plaza will be adding to downtown Oklahoma City?
I think it helps tell our story, and it's a really fascinating story that on the very same street, 5 blocks apart, we have two of the most profound examples of violence in our country's history. Of course, the Oklahoma City National Memorial depicts one of the most horrific acts of violence in American history. And also, it demonstrates the ineffectiveness of violence. There were the people that blew up that building and killed 168 innocent children, women, and men. Their diabolical plan was to bring this country down. And they really thought that this would be the first shot fired to bring the country down. And paradoxically, it brought Oklahomans together. Just down the street on Main Street and Robinson, on the same street, Robinson, is one of the greatest acts of nonviolence in American history. And it was all about nonviolence. It was all about turning the other cheek. It was all about staying focused and staying respectful. And Ms. Luper taught those children so well, and taught many more children that joined the sit-in movement. Our sit-in movement in Oklahoma City lasted 6 years. It went from 1958 to 1964. So not only was it the beginning of the sit-in movement, it was the longest in the country. So I guess that's it. Just the fact that down the street, 5 blocks apart, are two of the most significant examples of violence and nonviolence in our country's history. And it happened right here in Oklahoma City. And I think it's really good that we're telling that story. And it's also Sam Anderson that wrote Boomtown.
That's right.
He came over and visited Studio EIS in Brooklyn, I think 3 times when we were up there. And he's written a lot about Clara Luper. He's written a lot about the memorial, but he's written a lot about Clara Luper. And he brought the art editor from the New York Times over to the studio to see the final clay version. And the art editor from the New York Times described it to Sam as one of the greatest pieces of current day art that he had ever seen. So it really is. It's a beautiful piece of art that tells a remarkable story. And there are 5 hotels within 1 block of that sculpture. And as we're building the new arena, it's literally 1 block from the new arena.
Public art, the new arena, downtown Oklahoma City is just getting started. And you talk about Oklahomans and Oklahoma telling its stories. There's a big dedication coming up on November 1st, a chance to celebrate officially it's there, but there's going to be a big event on November 1st at 11 a.m. That's a Saturday. So if you're planning your calendar out there, folks, Saturday, November 1st at 11 a.m., a big dedication downtown of this sit-in plaza. What's gonna go on there? Are there any special guests lined up?
All the artists will be there. They'll talk a little bit about that process. Marilyn will tell the story, Marilyn Luper Hildreth. So, and then I think we have 5 different musical groups, including our symphony, the choir from Oklahoma City Public School, grade schools, Dungy, lengths to it. We'll have a great musical program, and also we're going to keep it to an hour. So we're going to keep it concise. Won't be a lot of big speeches. We really want people to enjoy it. The real star of the show will be that piece of sculpture and the story behind it. And if I could just tell one story that'll be depicted in the plaza. Another thing that's different about Oklahomans is I don't think this happened anywhere else in the country. But Ms. Luper and the police chief, I.G. Purser, were very close. And she would call him before they would go to a restaurant or a retail establishment and tell him they were going to be there. She was arrested 26 times. He did his job. But and the children were arrested numerous times too. But when I.G. Purser passed away, before he died, he asked his widow to do something. And what she did was she took his badge as Oklahoma City Police Chief to Clara Luper and gave it to her. Doesn't happen. I mean, that probably didn't happen anywhere in this country. And it says a lot. It says a lot about those two people, about Clara Luper and I.G. Purser, and about, we use that word again, respect. It says a lot about respect. But it also really tells us a broader story about people in Oklahoma. People in Oklahoma have disagreements. We politically, sometimes we're Democrats, sometimes we have Republican administrations, but all times I believe we have this tacit commitment to respect. And I don't think there's a better example of respect than the police chief wanting before he died, wanting afterwards his widow to take his badge to Clara Luper. She was arrested 26 times.
I think what you described, I envision a movie plot, like a movie, like that's really just about the police chief and Clara. And we IG and Clara, that could be the movie right there. But it tells a story that not enough people know. I knew the Clara Luper story in general, but I hadn't heard that. And again, for the second time in this conversation, little goosebumps on my arm. So it's a great story to tell. John Kennedy, co-chair of this committee to bring the Clara Luper National Sit-In Plaza to have this created, and it's in downtown Oklahoma City with a big dedication celebration happening on Saturday, November 1st at 11 a.m. John, thank you so much for being on the Oklahoma Memo podcast.
Thank you, Ryan, and also congratulations on putting on these great shows. I'm really excited about your podcast, so thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks a lot.
And now it's time for our weekly segment with News 9 News on 6 Griffin Media political analyst Scott Mitchell. Hello, Scott.
Good evening, sir. How are you?
And we're taping this on Thursday night, and it was a big day today on Thursday. Governor Stitt introducing his appointment, the first time in many years that a governor has been able to appoint a superintendent. I think we have to go back maybe to the Bellman era for that to have happened. But Governor Stitt appointed Lyndall Fields to be the state superintendent. What are you hearing about that selection?
That it fits two changes from the previous administration. And those two are, number one, responsible, and number two, adult. And I'm really not joking. I mean, this is somebody with an impeccable record. Look, Lyndall's a bureaucrat, okay? That's not a bad thing. I mean, people who show up, go to work, try to make life better for people. And a bureaucrat, here's an interesting thing. It's probably got a negative connotation, but they spend time trying to do good things, make things better, and not with an eye on the next election. And that's my understanding. What we have here is that this guy will spend the next, 15 months of the state administration and try to clean up the clown show that's been over there for 3 years. And so, and by the way, you think the ceiling is very high for Mr. Fields?
I was impressed by his speech this morning. His daughter was there. I don't know if any of his other children were there, but they were at Eisenhower, where his kids go to school. And I was impressed by his vulnerability. He seems like a kind man. I loved his mantra. I don't know if you heard it. It was, do what you say what you mean, but don't say it mean. And I'm like, what a breath of fresh air this is. I'm like,
Yeah.
I could feel the teachers of Oklahoma, exhale. Like there's some real trauma that has happened over the past 3 years that's going to take some time to repair. And I think that's what he's tasked with. He did have a list of priorities that included reading and other things. But I think his first course of business is to repair the relationship between the administration and teachers.
That's a great point. Number two, I don't know if they'll be going, I don't know when he'll go into that office, if it will look like a scene from Ghostbusters, will they be wearing Tyvek? In all seriousness, have you run into one single person, responsible adult, public servant this week, not ideologues, not people that are interested in the circus show that goes on all over the place these days, one responsible person who isn't going, it's a great day in Oklahoma?
Right. I sure have it. And I think you and I, it's not that we're Pollyannic, but we're also not cynical. I believe that people on both sides of the aisle want to do good and want to get work done. And anybody who obstructs that mission, regardless of ideology, is going to be a hindrance to progress, however you see it.
So my wife the other day said to me, she goes, the last few stories you've done on Griffin have been, you've almost kind of stepped out of the analyst role. And I kind of pushed back. I said, not really. I mean, from an analysis would be what is happening over there. And if it's, you know, if it's a smoldering dumpster fire, that's what it is. Okay. When you're 50th, it only took OSU 3 games this year to say, Mr. Gundy, you need to move on. And this legislature and this governor who frequently spar, okay, that department has been the biggest pain in the rear end to all of them up there across the board, Democrat, Republican, courts, for example. I mean, this is, and what we're talking about is, as we said last week, a 3-year losing streak. A 3-year losing streak. If you like ideologue and bombast and nonsense and hooey, that was your guy. But when it comes to delivering on what he was supposed to do, we were not hiring him to create memes and political satire. That's late night TV. This guy was supposed to be making our schools better and our students smarter. Fail. And we're not talking about a D. We're talking about the worst in the nation. Come on. I mean, so anyway, it has been, and listen, and Republicans outnumbering the Ds. The only thing I see that's holding back, there are some people who loved the personality. And I suppose, you know, 3 years ago, he was, if it's what do they call the baby faces in wrestling? And then they turn heel. This was like a wrestling deal, like a persona. And so it's gone. And I'm telling you, Ryan, what I'm hearing from people today is, man, that is so good. And the legacy for the governor, he gets to do what you just said, clean house, clean slate. But what I'm going to be watching for, there were 2 things. One, what the governor mentioned about appointing this in the future. And number 2, the attorney general and the governor and Mr. Fields and the people that were going there, who knows what they're going to find.
Right. We learned this week that Attorney General Gentner Drummond has asked for an audit of the State Department of Education. There had been one of the role of Secretary of Education once upon a time, but this is for the State Department of Education, the state superintendent years under Ryan Walters. Just looking at the management of funds, I'm sure that we heard that Matt Langston is no longer there. Who knows what they're going to find in terms of expenditures? And Jennifer Palmer, in her email from Oklahoma Watch, said, or she explained that a forensic audit like this isn't done unless you're actually looking for fraud or embezzlement. This could be a problem for Ryan Walters down the road.
Yeah, I would probably be more confident if this was some sort of forensic audit done by like a law enforcement agency instead of the a government accountant. But I will tell you this, there have been rumors for years about irregularities. Just put it that way. And I haven't seen, I don't think there's a chimney where we could see the files being burned like in the old days when, the Soviet embassy was thinking we were going to attack them. And the whole point is there's going to be some real, Jennifer Palmer's right. People are going to be descending on that agency, trying to figure out what's been going on in there, because it's in essence 3-year occupation by a circus. So yeah, that's going to be what we're watching for.
To be fair, I don't think we are rooting for there to be, charges down the road. It's just that we suspect that because there's an audit, we know that you don't do that unless you're looking for something. And if it turns out there was nothing there, we'll all be pleasantly surprised and send our apologies. Now, to the point about Governor Stitt talking today at the press conference about this role being appointed, I told you before we recorded, I actually agree with the governor on this. I don't believe every role should be appointed. You elect the chief executive for a certain reason, and this role seems to fit within the structure of a cabinet. However, that's not something that the governor can do unilaterally. It would have to be the legislature to decide that. Is there any appetite for that?
Yes and no. There will be, early on in the Stitt administration, in his term, there was the House and the Senate went along with a lot of power shifts to the governor. That happened less and less as they sparred more frequently and a little more friction, and especially the 3rd and 4th year. The governor has talked about within the last calendar year, he's mentioned it, and I've spent some time talking about electing everybody. And we elect everybody. It's a populous state. Ostensibly to keep power from concentrating. It's done the opposite. When you look at Corporation Commission, Insurance Department, those agencies, powers concentrated, and the way it's set up, you have interest are going to be doing the majority of the campaign donations. And insurance companies and utilities to the corporation commissioners. Nothing wrong with it. But it is not exactly heaven on earth for consumers, right? And you have to count on the integrity of people there. But now we're seeing issues like our property insurance rates, and people saying things about that department, like who owns it. We've seen in Oklahoma history where you'll have a lieutenant governor of the opposite party of the governor working against the governor. I mean, we really need an auditor that we elect. Okay, we really need to have a state treasurer that we elect. And we see so many times how those offices become political. They're doing everything. All they're thinking about is running again. And I'm talking about all of them. Okay. The one exception on this, you never hear controversy about running for elections, been the labor commissioner, Leslie Osborne. She's been doing her job for 8 years. They're not out there running for some other office. And I look up and down the list here, there's so many people running for some other office. So it's maybe a poli-sci exercise, Ryan, but would we have, Lyndall Fields will not be affected. It's not going to be impacted, apparently, by reports. He won't be seeking higher office. Guess what he'll be spending his time doing? Every single day, working on making SDE better.
Absolutely. And by the way, for anybody who's going to be overly cynical about this, you couldn't watch Lyndall Fields and not really in your gut of guts think that he was the right pick. I thought it was a home run, and credit to the governor. Now, speaking of the governor, we've got a governor's race next year, and we have a new candidate. Chip Keating enters the race, but not only do we have a new candidate, we have what I think was the first shot fired in terms of a commercial that really took this week. Charles McCall, former Speaker of the House, with his ad and the banana. You know what I'm talking about? Everybody out there who pays attention to politics. What does your gut say in terms of effectiveness? You and I talked about this, and on Oklahoma Memo on my TikToks, I've talked about this. This was top of the funnel stuff, and it's all about capturing attention, because folks aren't going to give somebody they're not familiar with the time of day unless they're able to capture your attention. He needed to do that. He did that in the world of political advertising. Also a home run. What did you think?
Well, so I went to another memorial today. It was actually Representative Morissette's funeral mass was in New Hampshire today. And then there was a private memorial of a lot of politician types. This evening, my wife and I went to. I mean, we saw a lot of folks, blessed from the past and current. And guess what they all asked me? Just what you asked me, right? They were all talking about Charles McCall's ad. And then they began to talk about the poll that came out about the same time as the ad, showing that the race, this was done by former Speaker McCall's pollster, but respected pollster, Chris Wilson, showing the thing was a dead heat.
Right.
Talk. That's what was going on. And so you said top of funnel, that it did exactly what it was designed to do.
Right. And I should note, I also noted this in some of the vertical videos I posted, not only McCall's pollster, but if you remember from the 2022 election, the only pollster who was even close to right. I mean, Chris Wilson was the sage of pollsters in 2022, and folks were laughing at him, and he's like, nope, we're confident. And he was spot on.
He nailed it. So that was my deal today, was people were going, well, do you believe that? Actually, I do. And I think that that's one of those, Speaker McCall's been on the air for a couple of months now, and he's talking those issues that appeal to the base. And that gigantic gap, there was some discussion. We all know who people were talking about. By the way, Walters wanted to run for governor so bad he couldn't see straight. When you come right down to the end, he couldn't raise enough money to pay his ethics fines. So not legit. And there have been some polling showing him up there. Well, people got tired of that. I mean, after how he behaved with a TV gate, and clearly he was lying about what was going on there. The adults were looking at the rambunctious kid in the room and go, we're not going to have that. So where the people are going to come from? So I think for a month I've said clearly there are two front runners, way before the poll came out, that Charles McCall was going to get into this race. He was radio silent. He was working every county fair, old time retail politics. And that's something he's been concentrating on. And you go to those county pie festivals for Republicans, and that's where the activists are, and the activists turn to the other activists. And, there's a talent gap likely between the front two candidates. The first one's to the poll, or to the battle, get to pick of the talent, from managers, consultants, to your ad buys. And when they have access to cash, that's what's been going on. Clearly, the Attorney General and former Speaker McCall have got the most talented people working for them. They're way out in front. And, Chip Keating's family is famous in the state of Oklahoma. I saw Governor Keating and Mrs. Keating the other day, and people still love them. So, former Senator Mazie, there's some other candidates in there, but they all have enormous amount of catching up to do. One person that I really trust that watches this says all of them are going to probably need somewhere in the vicinity of just media, $6-7 million to get through the cycle. Well, I'd say Speaker McCall and Attorney General Drummond are way ahead of all of them on there. So we'll watch how that spending happens. And just because you're spending it doesn't mean that your ads are good. I don't know who's doing the speaker's commercials, but dang.
It's off.
Yeah.
I've watched political commercials for 3 decades plus. It was good. And it doesn't matter what I think of it politically. It was a catch your attention sort of ad. Scott Mitchell, News 9 News on 6 political analyst. Thank you so much. I want to remind folks you can catch Scott on Hot Seat on Saturdays, and your vote counts both at News on 6 in Tulsa, News 9 in Oklahoma City. Scott, thank you very much. We'll do it again next week.
Always my pleasure, Mr. Welton.
Now it's that time in the Oklahoma Memo podcast where we let our hair down. We could talk some sports. And this is my Bedlam Bud. This is, my condolences. This is my buddy Jeremy. This is Bedlam Buds. And we're coming up on the weekend. There's a lot going on. So let's start with your Oklahoma State Cowboys. They're in Tucson, Arizona for the first time since 2012. What's going to happen this weekend? Do the Cowboys stand a chance to win?
Yeah, actually, the Cowboys do stand a chance to win. Arizona has been a real Jekyll and Hyde type of team. They have had a couple of really good games and a couple of really bad games. And so the problem is it's in Arizona. If this were in Stillwater, I would actually be predicting an Oklahoma State win. But being in Arizona, it's going to be a lot tougher. But again, they showed signs of life last week. And if they can continue that upward trend, the Cowboys have a real shot this weekend.
When I'm looking at that game, I like the over. I don't know what the over-under is, but I just feel like this is going to be one of those games where both teams are at least in the 30s.
Well, I mean, again, the offense did show signs of life, and the defense was still bad. And so if that trend continues, I very well could see the over on this for sure. Yeah. So what about your Sooners? How do you think they're going to do?
Well, I'm interested to see how Michael Hawkins Jr. performs. It is Kent State, and I don't want to discount any opponent, but the spread is like 45.5. And typically in that situation, I always take the opponent. I would take Kent State. It's just, against the spread. It's hard to cover 45.5 points, but I think there's a lot that the Sooners will work on tomorrow ahead of the Texas game. The Sooners will also look to minimize injury. And I think they will just try to come out of that game healthy and with a W, and I think they will take that. The other interesting game on the schedule, Tulsa at Memphis, and the interesting part isn't Tulsa, and I wish it were Tulsa, it's Memphis. Memphis is a good team. Memphis has got some grit. I watched the Memphis-Arkansas game, and then I watched them last week against was it South Alabama? No, it was Florida Atlantic. It was the Owls.
FAU.
It was on Howard Schnellenberger Field. But it was a close game until Memphis asserted its will. Memphis, when you talk about a Power 5 team, or I'm sorry, a Group of 5 team that could get into the playoffs, I'm very interested, not necessarily for this game. I think Memphis wins this one going away, but I'm really interested in the Memphis Tigers as a whole.
Well, I mean, and if we look at their forward schedule, they probably don't have a lot of super tough opponents, if that's fair to say, down the road. So if they can continue that pattern of playing so well, absolutely could see them in there. Could see that. So I just looked it up. The spread, I'm being bold here by saying the Cowboys have a chance. The spread is 20.5 to Arizona.
Oh, okay.
And over-under is 56.5.
I love the Cowboys in that situation.
100%.
Just against the spread. I absolutely think the Cowboys cover.
100%. And then the over-under is 56.5. So
I'd blow that out of the water. I'd take the over.
Yeah, I think so too. I think this is going to be like a 38-35 type of game.
Mm-hmm. Completely agree. And it'll be good weather. It's in Tucson. It'll be hot.
Right.
Speaking of hot, it won't be hot in Toronto when the Yankees come to Rogers Center because the dome will be on. And I will tell you, I've been to Rogers Center. It turns out it's one of my favorite stadiums, but they rarely open the roof. It has to be almost perfect conditions for them to open the roof. But I just say that to segue into our division series. We talked about baseball on the last Bedlam Buds. We got some right. We got some wrong. The Guardians sort of let us down here. But what are you seeing in the second round? You got Detroit, Seattle, New York, Toronto. You've got Chicago, Milwaukee, the Cubs. And then you've got the big series, Dodgers headed to Philadelphia.
Well, I think the Brewers are going to sweep. I think that I really do. I think the Brewers, they've been hot all year. They've been just a consistently good team this year. I think the Brewers, if they don't sweep, it may be one to the Cubs, one at Wrigley. But I think the Brewers are going to easily take that. Yankees, Blue Jays, boy, that's going to be a great series. But again, I have to go with the Blue Jays on this one. I think that I think they're positioned better for a deeper run than what the Yankees are right now. The Yankees had a really tough series with Boston, and baseball's a different type of sport. It doesn't necessarily take it out of you, but I think the Blue Jays are going to win that. Let's see here. Then the Dodgers, Phillies. I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah.
If I have to make a prediction, I'll just say the Phillies because they're the favorite. But goosh, I don't know. The Dodgers just smoked the Reds, which we called. But man, they did not show a lot of crack in their armor. Gosh, I don't know. What do you think about that one?
So having in-laws and a wife who are all Dodgers fans, I actually listened to a lot of the games, and I listened to Steven Nelson and Rick Monday. I'm on a kick now, Germ, where I'm listening to ball games on the radio. I have it on TV, and then I'll say, you know what, I'm turning off the TV. I'm going to listen to the radio. And it's like I've told you about Oklahoma State. I really enjoy listening to the radio call of these games because I am able to have theater of the mind. And as I was listening to both of the games against Cincinnati, yes, the Dodgers won going away, but people who didn't watch those games don't understand the struggle that the Dodgers bullpen had. Everything else was 10 out of 10, no notes, no crumbs left, as the kids say, is really just a perfect team all around. But the bullpen for the Dodgers was pretty scary. And that's where I think Philadelphia has a chance. If I were a betting man, I'm probably not going to bet against the Dodgers in any capacity, but I don't think that Philadelphia is Cincinnati. I do hope, as somebody who really loves Kyle Schwarber and Bryce Harper, I hope they show up. I hope that the week off isn't something that sort of lets them down mentally, and that Philadelphia, these are best out of 5 series. And so winning the first 2 games at home, if any team is able to do that, it really makes it tough for the other team to get into it, because you win those first 2 games at home, you can get closed out your first game there. When I look at Chicago, Milwaukee, I agree with you. I wasn't that impressed with the Cubs in this series against the Padres, and I wasn't that impressed with the Padres. Will there be a letdown given that they were a week off? They're so fundamentally sound. This is their time. I've also talked about things like destiny. With the death of Bob Uecker earlier this year, you just wonder, is he looking down from above, and is he just going to orchestrate this? Is this going to happen for Bob Uecker?
He's sitting on the front row wherever he is.
He's sitting on the front row. But teams, you got to have something to rally around. People who say that's overrated have just no clue about the power of storytelling, the stories you tell yourself. And so if I'm Milwaukee, I'm wrapping myself around, let's do it for Bob. So I would bet on the Dodgers. I'll be rooting for the Phillies. I won't say it too loudly around the in-laws, but
I won't text Christy at all. So,
but I won't be rooting against the Dodgers. It's just that I want Schwarber and Harper to get one before they're done there, because it's really put up or shut up time for the Phillies. I think Milwaukee wins that series. I would, earlier, last time we talked, I pulled out my Mariners cap.
Right.
And I talked about
great
being
look, man.
Team of destiny. But I will tell you, any team with Tariq Skubal, you've got a chance to win the series. And in a 5-game series, he's going to pitch 2 games. You're winning those games.
And also for the Phillies have an Oklahoma kid on their roster, JT Realmuto, who is related to the John Smith of OSU wrestling fame.
Very nice.
That's his nephew, and so so I kind of want the Phillies to win because we have an Oklahoma kid there. I met him. Not a big deal, but because there's an Oklahoma connection to them. I kind of want them to go now.
Well, do you remember Bryce Harper had one of his first big coming out parties, if you will, in Oklahoma as a 19-year-old? It was, I forget whether it was an AAU type situation, but I've had a number of people comment and say, he played ball at Westmore or more. I'm like, well, he didn't go to school there, but yes, there was a tournament there that he was in. So yeah, a lot of local connections. But the Detroit-Seattle series, I do think Seattle wins, but I would say I wouldn't discount Detroit. I think I'm higher on Detroit now than I was before, now that they seem like a team that's got some fight in them in the wins against. Their pitching was great against Cleveland.
But the Guardians pitching just collapsed when they really needed it. They brought a couple of guys in out of the bullpen and just gave it up. So I'm still leaning toward the Mariners on this, but you're exactly right. I could see the Tigers winning, but gun to head, I would have to predict the Mariners on this.
Right. So I'm a little more confident in the Yankees-Toronto series. I think the Yankees win it. I'm absolutely rooting for the Toronto Blue Jays. I tend to root for Toronto and anything that they're doing. Love the city. Love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. But with that said, in fact, I love the Rogers Center. Just love the vibe. If you're going to the Rogers Center for any of these games, get yourself a steak sandwich. It is and delight, one of the best things that I've had at a ballpark, and a Mill Street beer is just wonderful. But this is their first time in the playoffs in a while. I mean, they won the division, and I think there's something to be said for experience. Last night against the Red Sox, Schlitter threw that gem for the Yankees, and this is the time of year where experienced teams, inexperienced players on experienced teams start doing amazing things.
Yep.
And I think the Yankees absolutely have an advantage when it comes to that. And in fact, I think you'll see it tomorrow when the Yankees take game one. Again, it's just a hunch. The Yankees are the daddy of that division. And this is just a situation where they've got the experience, and it feels they ended the season 9-1. They lost that first game to Boston, backs against the wall. They won the next two. It just feels like the juggernaut is being unleashed again.
Well, and when these are predictions, you can have stats, you can have facts, you can have notes and information, but predictions are basically from your gut.
Right.
And I mean, and ultimately that's what it comes down to. And if that's where you're leaning, then lean into it.
Yeah, which in that case, I mean, I think you could see a Yankees Tigers, ALCS, Yankees Mariners, but I think it's going to be Milwaukee for sure, and I think it's going to be I would probably bet on the Dodgers.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Gun to head, as you said. Yeah. They are as outside of two off performances from their bullpen. They are as murderers row as we've ever seen, with a wonderful pitching staff. Not only do you have Yamamoto and Ohtani, who's going to pitch game one against Philadelphia, which that's a bold move. And I say it's a bold move because it's like you don't want him to get hurt on the mound, or there has been some evidence in the past that he doesn't do as well at bat when he's focused on the mound like that. But you also have Snell and Glasnow, and then Roki Sasaki, who came in and got a little experience in relief against Cincinnati just the other day, and that guy's throwing over 100 every time.
Well, again, you're exactly right that their pitching staff overall has shown just incredible depth. That's why I don't think throwing Ohtani at this first game is really that big of a risk, because if he starts out slow, you can pull it, because you have a whole bunch of arms behind him. Plus, that could possibly save him for another game down the road. So I think it's actually a pretty good move. It's bold, but I think it's a pretty good move because, game one is the game. I mean, if you get that game one, clearly the rest of the series, you're on the front foot. Now, Oklahoma City Thunder notwithstanding.
Right, 100%. Jeremy, Germ, Bedlam Buds, we talk about sports. We'll do this after the games this weekend and talk about all things Cowboys, Sooners, Golden Hurricane, you name it. Until next time, Jeremy, have a great weekend, man.
You as well. See you later.
Thanks. Well, what did you think? There's some good conversations there today. It's the second week for us doing the Oklahoma Memo podcast on a weekly basis, and we put a lot of interviews together. They are all available individually for you to listen to. And if you ever want to have a conversation on a podcast like this, I would invite you to reach out to me. Do so anytime anyway. news@oklahomamemo.com is the way to reach me. My name is Ryan again, and Ryan Welton, Welton, if you're not familiar with me. We've got a TikTok, we've got an Instagram, we've got a YouTube, and I've got a long career in journalism here in the state of Oklahoma. Again, connecting Oklahomans to vetted sources of journalism. Until next time, for the Oklahoma Memo Podcast, have a great week.